So this week on Out Motorsports, I am driving a 2019 Ford F-150 Raptor. Ford sent this truck to me for the sake of proving that it can tow just as well as the non-Raptor variants that you would see on the roads more frequently, like an F-150 XLT, Lariat, Platinum, all the way up to the fully loaded Limited. Now, the Raptor is positioned as the ultimate off-road version of the F-150, but in the crew cab, Super Crew form, Ford does say with weight distribution this thing can tow 8,000 pounds. So the initial point of this test was to see how the truck did as a daily driver that could tow, much like my other reviews have focused on. But when you're given the keys to a Ford Raptor, first of all, you never say no. Second of all, you find a day and a place in which you can take this thing off-roading. With that said, we got some time daily driving this to and from work in the DC area, got some time towing my 6,500 pound, give or take, enclosed race car trailer, and then also took it out for a day on trail just to see how it would do. Not really rock crawling, but more in the dirt, the gravel, the mud, at slightly higher speed versus like the walking pace 1 to 2 mile an hour rock crawling that you would do more on East Coast trails. What is a Raptor? Everyone knows the Ford F-150. It's one of the best-selling trucks in America for decades now, all the way from the base work truck level XL up to the fully loaded Limited. The Raptor is positioned towards the top of the pricing structure. The one I'm driving is a hair under $75,000 MSRP, but Ford does not position this truck as the ultimate on-road vehicle. They position it as a capable on-road vehicle that can also do really, really impressive things off-road at higher speed. So what do you get with the Raptor? Well, you get the 3.5 liter EcoBoost V6, which can be had in nearly any trim of F-150, but you get it in high output form. So Ford tweaks a few things with the engine to give it a little more horsepower and torque versus a standard 3.5 EcoBoost. So this makes about 440 horsepower and 510 foot-pounds of torque. And that's paired to the now standard on almost anything 10-speed automatic transmission, which is that Ford GM co-design, if you will. It's routed through a selectable four-wheel drive system that has an automatic 4x4 mode and can also be left in rear-wheel drive mode. Ford will claim the Raptor is about 6 inches wider than a regular F-150, which is the case, but it's because of fender flares. Because Ford gave this truck a little bit of a lift, and it's also on bigger tires, so they're not only taller but wider. So the truck sits about an inch higher than a regular F-150, and it's riding on, I believe, 35-inch BF Goodrich KO2 all-terrain tires. So Ford had to flare the fenders to get the tires to fit under them, which kind of increases the width of the truck in general, but it's not all the body panels. The cab is the same as a regular F-150 Super Crew. And I think really the truck's overall width is more or less considered the same if you count the mirrors. This Raptor does not have tow mirrors, it's just the standard mirrors, but they're the same as you'd get on any F-150, and the cab is not any different in width, nor are the mirrors any different in size. So I believe when Ford talks overall width, they're talking excluding the mirrors, but including the mirrors, it seems to be about the same. Kind of an interesting thing to mention. Like I said, it's about an inch taller as well. Thankfully, this one has some nice running boards on the side. I'm almost 6'2", and it was still a bit of a jump to get up in here every day driving to work. Now, like I said, Ford puts different big tires on this truck versus a regular F-150. These are much more off-road oriented. The other option that my truck has is the available Beadlock Wheels. So these are a 17-inch wheel. It's an upcharge versus the standard 17-inch wheel on the Raptor, but it ensures that the tire will not come off the bead of the rim if you deflate the tire pressure to go off-roading. So it's a little bit of an expensive upgrade, but it can be very helpful given if you are off-roading a lot and you do air down before your trails. You don't want the risk of just hitting something the wrong way and de-beading a tire. It's different than getting a flat, but you would have to still get the tire back on the bead, and that could be kind of a pain off-road on a trail somewhere. So this truck has them. I didn't put it in any situations where that would be necessary, but I definitely see the benefit there. Moving on from the wheels and tires, the other thing that Ford gives you with the Raptor are some Fox shocks. Fox has been known for a very long time to make a whole bunch of applications for different off-road vehicles as far as their shock absorbers are concerned. New for 2019, though, these shocks are adaptive, which means they can stiffen and loosen electronically based on whatever signal the truck gives it. So the truck has several different drive modes, 6 or 7 from what I recall, between on-road, normal mode, towing, sport, and then several different drive modes for slippery conditions or very rocky conditions, or higher speed. They call it Baja mode for higher speed off-road running. So you've got the adaptive shocks. You may notice my loaner also has these optional Recaro seats. They are covered in a mixture of black leather and blue Alcantara. They are fantastic seats, and they're a little more bolstered, a little more supportive than what you'd get on a regular F-150 with the front buckets. Now, someone asked yesterday why Alcantara versus full leather. I think it's meant to just hold your body in place a little bit more. The Alcantara is a little more grippy versus a full leather seat. So if you're running off-road and hitting some bumps, Ford obviously wants your body to stay exactly where you put it and not end up somewhere else in the cabin, so a little bit grippier seat fabric is helpful there. And these seats are heated and ventilated, and that's paired to a heated steering wheel that is leather wrapped. It's got this nice little red center line on it, and it's also got, you can't really see them where my hands are right now, but it's got paddle shifters, which you don't get on any other F-150, and frankly I thought were kind of silly for street driving, and truthfully they are. This whole truck is silly for street driving, but we'll come back to that in a bit. So those are kind of the big key portions of what the Raptor experience is. It's wider, it's taller, it's got better shock absorbers, better seats, a thicker steering wheel with paddle shifters on it, and then the highest output EcoBoost V6 that Ford produces in an F-150. So otherwise, the interior is pretty standard F-150. If you look at a well-equipped Lariat or a Platinum or a Limited, it'll be pretty familiar. It's got some glossy carbon fiber accents and then some matte carbon fiber accents where other different trim would normally be, whether that's wood or black plastic or whatever. Got the Bang & Olufsen sound system, 8-inch Sync 3 with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Pretty typical, if you've read or watched or seen any sort of review of a 2015 and up F-150, the interior will be pretty familiar to anybody at that point. So with that said, how did this truck do in all these different applications? I mentioned first street driving, second towing, third off-roading. As far as street driving is concerned, the truck is better than I thought it would be. It is wider in certain points, but like I said, the mirrors are still the widest or part of the widest point of this vehicle, so it's not particularly difficult to drive. That said, I live right outside Washington, D.C. I had to go into Washington, D.C. If you know the area, I had to go into Foggy Bottom on a work day for a meeting, and I had to park right on M Street, and the width of the truck is not excessive because of the mirrors. However, the track width is wider, and what I learned is if you're parallel parking this truck, it is almost wider than some parallel parking spots are as far as where the lines are painted. So I got lucky in that I found good parking that was wider than the truck somehow, and proved no challenge. But other spots throughout the week I've been driving it, I've had to park, get out and look how I fit, and then actually find another parking spot because this just won't really fit as well. The height also is a little bit of a concern in that you add another inch versus a regular F-150. All modern pickup trucks are already pretty tall, so it just makes it a little more difficult to park if you're in a more city type environment more often than not. If you live outside of the city, in suburbia, out in the country, out in the desert, whatever, not going to be a problem. It's just a truck. Otherwise, as far as city driving and commuting, this truck is actually quite good. I mentioned it has these adjustable shocks, and they actually quell one of the biggest complaints I had about my personal F-150. I had a 2018 F-150 Lariat with the 5-liter V8, and the F-150 Lariat and all of the other non-Raptor F-150s have just regular shock absorbers paired to leaf springs. The suspension setup on the non-Raptors is just really harsh, especially when it's unloaded. Obviously it's a mix of the shocks, the tires, everything in between, but what's interesting is even in regular daily driving on well-maintained paved roads, the Raptor rides markedly better than a non-Raptor version of the F-150. So I really appreciated that, just driving to work, running errands, going to see friends, things like that. The 10-speed automatic had some growing pains when Ford first released it for the 2018 model year, but some software updates kind of corrected those deficiencies. This truck, being a 2019, has all of those applied already, so again, not a concern. I've also felt that this transmission, with all the ratios it has, works a lot better with the turbocharged 6-cylinder engines versus the 5-liter V8 that I had in my personal vehicle. The fact that there's so many ratios to pick from, plus the boost of the turbocharged motors, really works well together. I thought it didn't work as well with the 5-liter. So again, the only engine option that you get with the Raptor is the 3.5 high output EcoBoost, and it's really quite a good drivetrain combo. The one complaint that I have about the drivetrain, which is not unique to the Raptor, but it's unique in the sense of the Raptor having a louder exhaust and a little bit different tune on this high output version of the motor, is that the exhaust note of the Raptor is by far its worst characteristic. It doesn't sound good. I don't really have an analogy for what it sounds like. It sounds fine outside the truck if you hit the remote start or something and you walk up. It sounds fine. It's kind of an aggressive V6. The problem is that they, all of the 3.5 EcoBoost equipped trucks, Raptor or otherwise, pipe some of that engine sound into the cabin via the stereo speakers, and it gets very drony, and it just kind of grates on you as you're driving for a long time. I had to drive the truck a couple hours to and from the off-road trail that I took, and it was just kind of unpleasant by the end of it. Especially because that exhaust note combines with the tire noise from the BFG KO2 tires, and just kind of provides this general sort of unpleasant noise if you're really getting on it or cruising at steady highway speed, 70 miles an hour. It can get a little tedious. So moving on to towing, this is not the first vehicle that most people would think of when they decide, hey, I'm going to buy a truck to tow my race car trailer, to tow my camper, to tow whatever. But, Ford says this thing can tow up to 8,000 pounds if it's properly equipped. The 8,000 pound number comes in if you have the Super Crew, which is the full 4-door cab with a weight distribution hitch. So fortunately, that's what I tow with anyway. No matter what truck I'm using, weight distribution is generally pretty helpful to have. It takes some of the weight off the rear axle of the truck. And so I went and hooked it up and figured I'd see how it would do. My trailer is an aluminum construction enclosed V-nose trailer. So it's about a 4-foot deep V with a 20-foot box. The overall length with the frame and everything is about 27 feet. And overall weight is about 6,500 pounds. So it's not the biggest thing in the world, but it pairs well with a truck in the half-ton category. I had been very impressed with my standard F-150's tow ability when I was daily driving that truck and towing with it. And I had been impressed with the other F-150s I had received as loaners or as rentals, over the last 18 months while I had the 5-liter F-150 of my own. So the chassis in general I figured was pretty good, but then when you take the Raptor and make the suspension overall softer for the sake of off-roading benefit, how would that hold up to this extra tongue weight and payload, all hanging off the back of the truck? I hooked everything up and went for a drive. I put about 65 miles on the truck with the trailer, anywhere from city driving to suburban driving, all the way up to 70 mile an hour highway, with lane changes and everything, passing and being passed by 18-wheelers, kind of typical scenario for towing at interstate speed. And to be honest, I came away very impressed. I thought the weakest point of this truck was going to be its towing performance, and it was really not the case. It towed very well. I think the suspension with the adaptive shocks helps out quite a bit. I can't confirm that the shocks do anything special in tow mode, but there is a drive mode for towing. Ford will tell you that it only adjusts the transmission mapping and it leaves the shocks in normal, but I am working to figure out with Ford if the shocks do anything to adapt to that extra weight hanging down on the back. So if I find anything out, I will certainly update with a follow-up to this video, but regardless, the truck handled the load very, very well, and I was actually surprised at how well it did. So I don't think I would put a larger trailer on this truck than what I had. Maybe if you had another 500 pounds or so of things in the back, it would be okay. But I don't know if I'd go bumping right up against that 8,000 pound rating or put a longer trailer on the truck where it has to combat just the bigger sail in the wind effect with, say, a 28-foot box plus the frame. I think this truck might just be a little too soft for that versus a standard F-150. And if you want the maximum towing out of an F-150, you really end up going with a 3.5 liter based max tow equipped non-Raptor truck, whether that's a Lariat or XLT or whatever that case might be. So once I returned the trailer, I figured I have the keys to this truck. It is meant for off-roading. I should go do it. So I did. Now, one thing to think about with off-roading, especially as it is on the East Coast, especially as it is right around the DC metro area, we do have some good trails available in the state of Virginia within a couple hours drive. But the Raptor, as I said, is a big girl. It's just large no matter how you look at it. And the width that I said is kind of not an issue in general daily driving because it's still as wide as the mirrors and no wider, does become an issue when you go off-road because, like I said, the track width is wider, the fenders are wider. It makes a larger width of target to hit things with. So you have to really be cognizant of how wide your trail is, and that kind of put a damper on where we could take this thing when we did take it off-road. So what we ended up doing was going to a trail called Flagpole Knob, which is right outside of Harrisonburg, Virginia, and it's not the most challenging trail from a technical perspective. It's basically a kind of rutted gravel and dirt fire road that goes all the way to the top of a mountain and provides some really great views of the Shenandoah Valley. Easy enough trail to conquer, if you will. When I did the $1,500 all-wheel drive challenge, we got all of those vehicles up it with zero hassle, zero concern. So, you know, it's not really the best comparison when you take an all-wheel drive Chrysler minivan and then say, I'm going to take my Ford Raptor and take that up the same trail. But what the trail did allow was some opportunity to explore the Fox shocks and how those adaptive shocks worked with the truck in some adverse road conditions where you maybe wouldn't go as fast in a normal vehicle off-roading. So to kind of riff on that, this truck has the adaptive shocks, it's got all the different drive modes, one of which is called Baja mode, and that really speaks to where this truck is meant to live and run and play. If you take this truck out west and think about the old pre-runner type trucks that were meant to go fast in the desert where there's not a lot to hit, but you're on dunes, you're in the sand, you're jumping things at a somewhat high speed, you're looking to run at a faster pace for a long time. That's what this truck is for. So everything that I talked about in the street driving part and the what this truck is part of this video, from the red ring on the steering wheel to the paddle shifters to the shocks and everything that feels kind of soft and able to absorb everything, it's meant to go fast off-road. So the thing with Flagpole and the road going up to the summit of Flagpole Knob is that it's a two-way trail, fire road if you will, but there are some long stretches where you can see if anyone is coming. We also had the benefit of being with several other friends and could send someone ahead to make sure that no one was actually coming. But there are these long straight stretches where there's really nothing to risk, and the trail has these little undulations that can get the truck a little light in the suspension and then it has to catch itself. You're not at the point nor would you want to be where you would actually say, oh, we got air in the Raptor. It's not the place for that. There would be very real risks if you were going fast enough to say, oh, we caught air. But you do get the chance to work through a gear, pop it from second to third at mild throttle and get just enough speed to make the truck do some work with those Fox shocks and catch itself every time it comes down. And there were 4 of us riding in this truck doing that as we had someone on the radio making sure we were clear ahead for these straight stretches. And it was so impressive. I have never been in a vehicle off a paved surface where it felt so comfortable the whole time. You were definitely getting bounced up and down a little bit. It was not like you didn't know what you were doing, but everything was in control. There was no worries of, where are the wheels? Is anything going to come out from under me? Is the suspension not going to catch us this time? It was just so relaxed and easy. It made me really appreciate what this truck could do if you take what we did, put it in a big open desert where you may have the ability to go 50 or 60 miles an hour off-road. I don't know if that's a thing people can do out west. I have never lived there, nor am I really tuned in with that off-roading scene, but I'm assuming that is something that is theoretically possible somewhere, and I think this truck would do really, really well at it. It was just so confidence-inspiring the entire time. And then when you get it into a scenario like a mud pit, which if you take a look at the photos in the article, we may have found a mud pit. You just make sure you lock the differential, you just push a quick little button, and it will pull itself out of whatever it needs to pull out of. Now, one other interesting button that this F-150 Raptor has that non-Raptor F-150s do not have is a button that turns on the trail control. Now, what trail control does is something very similar to hill descent control, which is seen on all sorts of trucks and SUVs at this point. It's something that the Land Rovers of the world pioneered way back, and it's kind of propagated everywhere now. But trail control doesn't just control your speed down a hill, it will also walk the truck up a hill. I ended up using the trail control to go up a little hill as an offshoot of flagpole. I set it to about 2 miles an hour, and with my feet off the pedals, all I did was steer, and the truck walked itself right up the hill. And the best part is it turns on the forward-facing camera, so if you're pointed up, you can't really see what's over the hill, what's coming up, because you're looking at the sky. Well, the camera's pointed right out of the grill, down at the ground, and you can see where you're going. So it really made quick work of a hill that was otherwise a little bit intimidating given the angle and the size of the truck and where my head was pointed. No big deal. Now, like I said, the width of the truck is a bit of a concern. I definitely didn't want to put surprise pinstripes down the side of this truck given it belongs to Ford and not me. So we really had to be considerate of the trail we chose to try all of this off-roading capability out on in the first place. But then even when we were going up to Flagpole, there are a couple different routes you can take to get to the very top of the summit. And the first one that I turned to go up, I turned and got the nose of the truck in and stopped because I realized there were going to be trees and branches just impinging on us. To that end, this is not meant to work on every trail. It's not meant to work in every situation. It's meant to be out west where there's a ton of room, nothing to hit, nothing to scrape it, and it will run and run and run and run. Absolutely a very impressive truck, doubly so when you consider how well it towed on top of the off-roading credentials that it clearly has. The only thing that I really wish is that Ford would come out with a version of this that was smaller. They have the Ranger. Why don't we have a Ranger Raptor? Maybe if we get the next generation Ranger in the States, it'll come with a Raptor package. But I could see all of this technology being really, really beneficial and available to more people if they just put it in a smaller package, whatever that might be. So Ranger, I know they've teased us with the Bronco, which will be Ranger-ish sized, Ranger-ish based. I think if they incorporate all of this technology into those smaller packages, they will have a really big hit on their hands because this truck is just that impressive. So with all that said, a big thank you to Ford Motor Company for providing this truck to me for the week. Have really enjoyed having it, and we are looking forward to whatever might come next. And please do remember, if you're looking to follow the adventures of LGBT competitors in motorsport and our adventures on road as well, Give us a subscribe here on YouTube, follow us on Facebook or Instagram at Out Motorsports, and check out everything that we publish on outmotorsports.com. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.